cancel culture? Are you serious? I would not be here if someone canceled me. I would not be here at all. All the lives that I've touched, all the people that I've connected with, my beautiful family, none of it would be here at all today if I was canceled. I am for justice, and I believe you can't have love without justice, right? I totally understand that. But I don't think cancel culture is pressing justice. It's just pressing cancellation. The problem is us. We jack things up and we jack each other up, right? And so no matter which way we slice it, we need something better.
A familiar voice back on the podcast today, slinging truth bombs. All that and a bunch more is straight ahead. So let's go. This is the show dedicated to raising up the next generation of men of faith and character. My name is Mark Stanifer. Welcome to the Next Man Up.
Part of the NRT Podcast Network.
Well, hey guys, welcome to the Next Man Up. So good as always to have you with us once again today. Well, if you've been with us from the beginning, then you are going to recognize immediately the voice and the guest today. If you are new to the show and you haven't listened to the beginning or the first number of episodes, then this voice and perspective is going to be new to you. I'm so excited to have Alon Auguste back on the podcast with us today. Alon is a co-founder of the show. He's a great friend of the show, of what we're doing. He's a personal friend of mine. And like I said, I'm excited to have him back. For those of you that don't know, Alon does a number of different things, but during the day, he spends his time with a charter school here in the Metro Columbus area, working as a culture coordinator. Beyond that, his passion is to speak into the lives of young people through music, through preaching, through rapping, through dance, through any number of means to communicate to them the truth about who they are and about whose they are. And our conversations always come at the topic at hand from a different perspective when Alon is involved. That's because he sees things differently and he challenges each of us, including me, every time to see things differently as well. Today's topic around cancel culture is no different. I came into the topic thinking one thing, Alon comes into the topic thinking something different. And I think in the end, what we get to is a good place, a way to understand what cancel culture is, a way to confront it, and also ultimately a way to offer something better. Well, like I said, I'm excited to have Alon back and to share him with you. Whether you're a longtime listener or more recently part of this community, you are going to enjoy Alon's perspective on confronting cancel culture. So let's get to it. Here we go. Alon Auguste, Confronting Cancel Culture. Well, Alon, what a pleasure to have you back, man. It's so good to see you, have you back in this space and to be doing this together again. Thanks for coming back and paying us another visit.
Thank you, man. Thanks for inviting me, dude. I was like, man, I hope he's going to ask me sometime to come back. Did I do that bad of a job?
No, I think we left that door open, right?
We did. Totally good terms. It was awesome, man. But I appreciate it. I woke up this morning with a smile on my face, like, wow, I'm about to go and hang with Mark and do an episode again on The Next Man Up. I'm excited about this. This is like a coming home story for me. So this is good. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I'm excited too. I told you this when we were talking before. It just kind of thinking through and in preparation that I always value your perspective and your opinion. And what we're going to get into today, it's going to be pretty evident that, I come into the discussion thinking one thing and you come in thinking something different. And
rice and beans, buddy. Go together well.
Rice and beans. And I love that about you because you're always you're always challenging me, and I think you're challenging the listeners as well to see it differently. You know, don't just settle for this perspective. What about if you could see it differently? And I love that challenge. I've missed that challenge, and so I'm happy to have you back for a challenge today.
Let's get it going then.
So the topic that we're going to lean into is cancel culture. And as I've been thinking about what's going on in our culture and culture in general and the cancel culture specifically, which we'll unpack here as we go, I felt like for a long time I've been wanting to address this. Mm-hmm. And in this medium, on this platform, this topic, and I know you always have a pulse on culture. And again, back to that different perspective, you've got a different perspective on this cancel culture thing, right? This movement, if you will, that's kind of taken hold over the last couple of years. And so I think we're going to come at this in a way that maybe the listener isn't going to expect, but it needs to be. We need to talk about it.
Yeah.
At least I think so anyway. And you know, I see you nodding your head, and I hear your voice as well.
Yeah, Mark. Thanks, man. You know, I think working with young people. You know, being a culture coordinator at a middle school and elementary school, I don't know. It's just I feel like I get to see the beginnings of things, and then I hang with adults and I watch the world go, and I look at these young people and I see where we're heading, and I go, oh man, we're setting them up for some serious trouble if we continue to head down this road. In particular, when it comes to cancel culture. Cancel culture, you know, if you're wondering what cancel culture is, it's when through media, social media, in person, someone is basically ostracized or considered like an exile because of an action or because of statements that they made, whether it's now or it could be, 20 years ago. Things can surface, and if the general public finds it to be offensive, to be not culturally appropriate, then that person just gets so-called canceled.
Yeah.
And so what that means is you could have 100,000 followers on some social media site, and all of a sudden you're down to zero.
Yep.
You can be like a famous music artist with millions of listens a day per song, and then all of a sudden no one listens to you. You can have an amazing talk show. You could, just name it, and you can get canceled. And part of it, I think is there's so many ways to look at this. And as I've been thinking about this, Mark, there's so many ways to go, so many different avenues to talk about this with. But let me try to zero in here. So when you think about it, there's this sense of justice that kind of comes to the surface when someone is canceled. Like this sense of you did something wrong. Whether it's wrong towards me or wrong towards others, you did something wrong, and justice needs to be served.
Yep.
And so you being outed, whether that means your livelihood, whether that means your character, no matter what it is, we're going to oust you and make sure that everyone knows that you did something wrong, so therefore you are canceled. And there's something kind of right about that, right? I mean, if someone does a crime, that sense of you do the crime, you do the time, right?
Yeah, some accountability.
Yeah, there's some accountability. When I think about it, when I've hurt people in the past, whether it's through actions or statements, and there's a sense of empathy that's in me that when I think about that situation, I want to say, oh man, I did something wrong. And there's a sense of turning around and acknowledging that, right? And making things right in that sense. But that's not what's happening here. It's just a sense of you did something wrong and we cut you off.
You're out.
You're out. If that is the case, then what cancel culture is saying is anytime anyone in any space or universe has done something wrong, then they need to be cut out of the rest of society. If that is the case, then everyone needs to be canceled.
Yeah.
The internet needs to die then. Social media sites need to be silent. People need to stay in their homes and in the closet and think for the rest of their lives what they did wrong.
Right.
That's what cancel culture pushes towards. And when I'm dealing with young people, I go, is that really like a healthy outlook that we need for our kids to embrace? Is that you can't fail. You can't make mistakes. You can't drop the ball at all, because if you do, the world will come down on you like a hammer to the head.
Yeah.
Or B, if you do something wrong, be very careful to keep it in the dark or in a safe as long as you can.
That's right.
Both of those routes don't seem right at all. I don't know. You tell me.
Well, so I'm with you, right? Again, seeing this from a different perspective, but you're making me think of a quote from a Forbes article that I was reading about cancel culture, and as part of their definition for it, they said it's also a belief that you are no better than your worst moment. No matter how young you were when you transgressed, even if it was an isolated incident. And I thought, how true, right? We're reducing people to their very worst moment.
In time, yeah.
Right. Which then it also makes me think like, okay, whoever is without sin, cast the first stone.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Now we may be jumping right to the conclusion at the end here.
Yeah.
But that's what it makes me think of, right? Or the picture that Jesus drew of before you try to pull the speck out of the other person's eye, deal with the plank
in your own.
Right. Now, and I know you and I in this context are talking to a faith-friendly audience. The broader culture isn't necessarily held to that same standard because they're not necessarily faith-friendly per se, right?
Sure.
But as we're examining and critiquing what's going on, I think your argument is a valid one that, hey, before we just start canceling out everybody else who's done something quote-unquote wrong, we might need to look in the mirror and check our own actions and behavior, else we're at risk for the same treatment.
And the reason why I push that so much is because I feel like empathy is something, I don't know, it feels non-existent sometimes in our society today. The idea of putting yourself in someone else's shoes, to feel what someone else is feeling, to try to understand someone else's circumstance, not have pity, not be like, just straight sympathetic. I'm saying be empathetic,
right?
To be like, oh wow, yeah, I kind of know what that feels because I understand. You are not me, Mark. Therefore, you can never know my experience of life, just like I can never know your experience of life, but we are both human. And if we could see each other's humanity, if we can look at each other and go, I know I may not be Mark, but I know what it feels like to be human. I know what it feels like to experience pain, to experience suffering, to experience happiness, to experience joy. I know what it feels like, and because we're both men, I can say, I know I'm not Mark, but I know what it feels like to be a man. I can, you know what I mean? Like we can find the commonalities like together. And then we can be able to grow empathy for each other. Therefore, we can probably work things out with each other a lot better. You know what I'm saying? We can be able to reach across the table and grab hands and try to make a better world together. Isn't that what we want? Do we want to be able to coexist with someone else? But how do you do that when all we're doing is looking at each other's wrongs and faults and how many times we've dropped the ball and offended and whatever? Now, don't get me wrong again. Like I need to keep stressing this because I am for justice. I am for justice, and I believe you can't have love without justice, right? I totally understand that. But I don't think cancel culture is pressing justice. It's just pressing cancellation.
Right.
It's the idea of going to court and not being able to make right what you did wrong. That's it. It's basically, Alon, you made a racist remark back in the day when you were in middle school. You said something completely wrong, and therefore you were done. There's a different way, and I want to press that different way. What about, because if we build with each other and we have empathy with each other, we can look and go, hey, I wonder what was going through so-and-so's mind when they said or when they did this. I wonder what they were feeling. I wonder what was going on in their lives at that moment that they felt it was okay to make that remark or to do that action. I wonder if they've actually ever sat with that feeling or sat with that experience or circumstance and really dug into it and pressed into it. I wonder if they even feel any like remorse about what they did. I wonder if anybody's ever asked them if they could ever go back and change what they did. Would they? I wonder if someone even asked them if you can make things right today by what you did. Now, what you did is done. But if you could make things right today, would you? And how would you do that? See, this is what I do with kids. This is what I do in the school that I work at. I take a kid who's done something that others would say, oh my gosh, that's incredibly horrendous what that child did. I would never allow my child to do that. I would never, in the shame and the guilt that gets heaped upon that kid, I take that child and I sit that person down and I walk through them. What was going through your mind when that happened? And when you did that, when you said that? Do you know how that might have made this other person feel? How would you feel if someone did that to you? What would you need for someone to make things right with you if they did that to you? How could you make things right? Well, let's go do that. I give them a chance to correct the wrongdoing, to make things right. Not say change in a sense of erase or rewind time. I'm talking about doing something in the now to make things right for what you did. That's the world I want to live in. That's the world that I think a lot of people want to live in. But if we go down the road of cancel culture, you can't have that world. You don't have that. It's almost like we're sitting down. We were sitting down for lunch, and when we were talking about this, it's almost, I think I made a statement. It's almost like people want to create a utopia.
Yep.
In a sense of like, just excommunicate, exile all the bad, the evil, and whatever, and have this perfect world with nothing wrong, where we all sit down and we're happy with each other. Mark, listeners, I'm not quite sure that can happen with cancel culture. I don't think it can. Like we're walking down a path that says you can't do anything wrong. In other words, what we're saying is you need to be a robot. The last time I checked, humans, we have feelings, we have a mind, we have different opinions. We're going to step on each other's shoes, and to act like just because I stepped on your shoes or did something wrong towards you that I need to be out, I'm not quite sure that's utopia. I think that's a city full of robots.
Yeah.
And I watched The Matrix and I watched The Terminator, and I'm not quite sure if I want to live in that world, right?
Right.
So I mean, it's to take it to the extent of anything you want. Like, any utopia that you want, I'm not quite sure we can get that with us. I feel like we need something bigger in order to get that done. Whether you're a conservative and you're like, like capitalism, that's the way. Yeah, well, you know what? Even with capitalism, we kind of jack things up too. We get money-hungry people, we get wars, we get famines and whatever, all because we want power and money and we're greedy, right? Oh, then, well, I want to be a communist. And it's like, well, I want communism to run things because communism will rule and reign and everyone will be equally sharing all the spoils and all the goodness. Yeah, last time I read my history books, no communistic regime ever ended well.
Right.
Right? It just hasn't ended well. I mean, take it dictatorship to democracy. The problem is us. We jack things up and we jack each other up, right? And so no matter which way we slice it, we need something better. We need something bigger if we want utopia, right? We want and in my mind, I'm thinking you say we want heaven. And the last time I checked, the only thing that can produce a heavenly spot is God. And that's why I press him so much. And I'm not trying to preach at listeners. I'm just saying, look, if what's at the head of the table is always jacking things up and we get upset and we want to cancel it, maybe we need to change out people at the head of the table. Maybe we need a new face to look at and we need a new person to follow. Maybe every time that we put our faith in each other and we let each other down, maybe it's because we're not following the master, the creator, the person who made us, the one who knows our hearts and our minds, the one who can point us in the right direction. Maybe what we really need is Jesus and his kingdom. That's what I press.
So take a breath.
Okay.
Because
I know I said a lot there.
I haven't seen you this animated in a while, and it's a lot of fun, which also tells me that this topic is striking a chord with you, and as a result, I think it will strike a chord with our listeners. You mentioned utopia. You mentioned some economic and political structures, and I think it's important to note here this different perspective that I alluded to at the beginning. So often in my circles, cancel culture comes up as thought police imposing the right words, the right thoughts, the right position, the right virtue signaling. And if you don't virtue signal or say the right things or do things the right way, you're canceled, right? Mm-hmm. And so those in my circle, and probably many in your circle as well, look at this cancel culture, what's happening from a political or an economic or a governmental perspective. And we're not going to go there today because in my analogy before, those would be the trees. And I want us to zoom out and see the forest, which is exactly what you and I were doing at lunch, right? Mm-hmm. When we were planning this episode, as you started to lay out, here's how you see things. And it's exactly what you just said. what if there's a different way? What if there's a different ideal to point to? What if it is us, continues to be us? It has been us all along when we try to do things our own way, regardless of whether it's right or left, communist or capitalist, right? Like, we could argue that the way that we live in this West culture in the U.S. is better than. And you can make those arguments.
Sure.
And those of us that are bristling now, seeing some of our rights and privacies seemingly infringed upon, can easily point the finger and say, it's the cancel culture problem. It's the other side, right? Whatever side, it's the other side. But what I love about what you're saying is, hold up, let's zoom out and let's see this for a bigger issue, human to human. How are we treating each other, regardless of differences, regardless of life experience? Bring the empathy, bring the purposeful attempts at understanding the other person, and maybe in the process we can have a dialogue and we can gain some understanding of each other rather than just whoosh, out. You're out.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Doesn't work. And like we you know, and I'll press again, we don't want to teach that to our kids. So then how are we going to live this out? Like, if it's not okay for our kids, but it's okay for us.
So you're talking about us as fathers, us as men, setting an example. Say more about that. Where are you going? What's going through your mind when you say that?
Well, you know, so listen, first off, you know, young people are smarter than we adults think. Let's just throw that out there.
Even teenagers?
Yes. Like, you know, and I you know, I normally I step on and say, look, you know, your brain is not fully developed until, like, I think 24, 25 for women, and then men are a little later, like at 26 or so. I don't know. I might be off on the numbers, but we don't have fully developed brains until we're like in the second half of our 20s, right? In the later half of our 20s. And so I share with kids, like you're going to make more mistakes and you're going to do things that probably don't have any good answer to the question of why. Because your brain is not fully developed. You're running on impulse and instinct of just do what comes to your brain first, or in your heart first, right? But that doesn't mean that they don't think, and that young people aren't processing the messages that we're sending them through our actions and through our words as adults, right? And so if we are and now let's zero this in to like fathers, because this is a show about the next man up.
That's right.
Right?
That's who we're talking to.
Raising the next generation of boys, right? Fathers being good fathers to their boys and whatnot. And I'm thinking, if we are engaging in cancel culture and we're running along with the rest of culture and we're just canceling people who have done things wrong, who have offended us, who have, like, you know, whatever, name it, put it out there, right? The messages that we're sending to our kids, our boys, they're processing that. And whether they agree with it or not, the message is still the same. Empathy shouldn't be held on to. Instead, what we should do is we should just straight be the judge, be the executioner. Like, that's it. If you see something wrong, jump on that impulse, jump on an instinct of whatever comes to mind and heart, and just go ballistic and destroy, right? Obliterate, push out, excommunicate, exile out of like society, because they're not worth it. They are not worth it. That's a message that we're sending to our boys. And the question is, do we really want to send that message? Or what if instead of running along with the rest of culture, we go, here's a message that I want to send to you, son. This person, they did wrong. They jacked up. They harmed somebody. Someone out there is hurting because of what they said or did. And you should understand that me and you are only a half a step left to the right of ending up in the same boat as them. Understand that you and I, we will drop the ball. At some point in life, you're going to mess up. How would you want people to address you when you do something wrong, son? Like, talk to me about shame. Talk to me about how you feel about that, when you feel shameful and when you feel guilty about something. Talk to me about being pushed out of a circle for sports, for education, for friendship in our neighborhood because of maybe a lack of something. How do you feel? Can we talk about that? How do we address that, son? How do we like go about living in a society that ostracizes people like that? Is there a different way? You're smart. I know your brain is working, son. How would you want to be addressed, and how would you want to walk this out in your life? I mean, those are great questions to build empathy, to build character, to help our boys become a great young man in this world who look at the rest of humanity and say, there is hope for us. I was at a juvenile detention center a few years back, actually many years back. I think it was like 2004. I walked into this juvenile detention center. First off, I think I had like a blue shirt on, totally forgot, gang colors and whatever. The young people in there they started going nuts. I had to change my shirt. It was a crazy moment. But anyway, that was a little bunny trail. But anyway, I got up in front of them and I made several statements. I shared my story and I made this statement. I said, the world looks at you and they see nothing but failures. They see no good like pieces of trash. They see killers. They see people who just want to destroy. And I went down a list and I was like, the difference between what the world sees and what like God has taught me to see is this. I don't see any of that. What I see is lawyers, and what I see is doctors. What I see is mechanics. What I see is teachers. What I see are fathers. I see young men who, if you give them the opportunity and chance and pour hope into them, give them the ability to be more, they can walk out of here and do something amazing with their life. Not a dry eye in the middle of that room. Not one, Mark. These were young, hardened men. Someone actually told them something different, gave them hope. You see, what I press is that what if we gave hope and we inspired hope drivers in our young boys who are able to see the most like dire parts of society and go, this is not the end. There could be more. What if we taught our boys to notice and to wonder and to hope for more just by teaching them to build empathy for other people and to not just be the jury, judge, and executioner, but to ask good questions to spark people to turn around and do something different. That's what happened with me. I was aiming down a road that would have left me dead. I've hurt many people. I've said many wrong things, but because someone inspired hope in a little boy, I was able to turn around and become the man that you hear today, that you see today. I am not my mistakes, and I am not my hurting and all the things that I've done wrong. I am Alon. And who is Alon? Alon is a man who has been inspired by hope, who lives and walks out love, who has all of a sudden learned how to trust and to build trust with others. I am not that young boy that I used to be. But it's only because someone gave me a chance. Cancel culture? Are you serious? I would not be here if someone canceled me. I would not be here at all. All the lives that I've touched, all the people that I've connected with, my beautiful family, none of it would be here at all today if I was canceled. Listeners, if you're like, man, you sound really passionate, you sound way too excited, this is something that is near and dear to my heart, as you can see, it wouldn't be right if I wasn't passionate about teaching a different way besides this cancel culture that's out there. It wouldn't be right at all. And so if you're like, wow, he sounds wild, I apologize if it's too much for you, but please hear the message in it. This ain't the way to go. We need a better way. And there is a better way. We just need to walk it.
I think it's also important to remind folks where you started in this conversation, which is passionately about justice as well, right?
Yeah.
It's not cancel culture as bad, full stop. It's that there's something better, and that better still requires accountability for actions. There are consequences for decisions. Yeah. You do something that rubs people wrong, then okay, you're offensive. You do something that goes against the law, well then there's there's criminal consequences there too, right? So absolutely. You are not at all suggesting that we endorse an environment without justice, without accountability, without responsibility. What you're saying loud and clear is, although it seems to be popular today, cancel culture is not the way to go. In all the episodes that Alon and I have done together to get this show up and running, I'm not sure that I've ever experienced his passion and his zeal as much as I did in the recording of this episode. As I told him before, as I told you at the beginning, I was looking forward to this topic. I've just felt for a while that this topic needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed in this forum. And I've been anxious for Alon to be that person, be that guest that we bring in to have this discussion about what cancel culture is, what's really happening, and how we can confront it in a healthy and in a godly way. And as promised, he delivered a different perspective, certainly one that's different than I expected when we first started planning this episode. In fact, he communicated early on some optimism about the moment that we have today in our culture, in our world, to speak into what's happening, to elevate the discussion above the political fray, above the political, governmental, economic structures, which is how so often we come into this idea of cancel culture, to elevate it above that, to get beyond the trees and to see the forest of the issue, which is in the end really how we're treating one another. And in the midst of this injustice, this mistreatment, this canceling, this shaming, this ostracizing of one another, offer a better way, one that leads to hope and one that points to where that hope comes from. That's what I love about what Alon brings into each and every discussion. And as I said, was excited to have him back to be part of the podcast once again. Well, you guys know this. We usually break these into two, and this is where we're going to pause for this time. But we will be back to finish it next week, and I promise there's more truth bombs to come from one Alon Auguste. But for now, we're going to wrap this here and look forward to bringing you the second half of this Confronting Cancel Culture conversation next week. So I wish you well. Until then, guys, adios. Hey listeners, thanks for journeying with us on this Next Man Up podcast. We would love to hear from you. Maybe you have a question or an idea, perhaps a topic for us to consider. If that's you and you want to reach out to us, you can get us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. That's feedback@thenextmanup.com. Again, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we'll see you later.